Hello and welcome to the video version of my journal. I'm Stephanie Rivers. Come on in, kings and queens, and welcome to the conversation. You're watching the simulcast, broadcasting on Facebook Live and YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter. So I want to welcome all of the viewers to the conversation. If this is your first time watching my video version of my journal, please be sure to like and share and subscribe so that the next time I post new videos, you will be the first to know. I want to welcome you to the conversation. And if you are returning, we want to welcome you back. By now, I'm sure you know that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted of all charges against him for crossing over state lines with an illegal weapon, an illegal assault rifle, and shooting at 4 people, killing 2 of them, wounding a third, and the 4th one ran away. Experts are going to explain why they think his self-defense claims were allowed and why the jury bought his self-defense claims. But what I want to focus on today is the growing epidemic of white rage in America. Why are white people so angry when they control the criminal justice system? They own most of the land. They control the political structure. They dominate politics. They dominate business. Angry white women, we know them as Karens. We call them Karens. They confront people who are not breaking any laws, minding their own business. But if a Karen is not the priority in the moment and she thinks she should be, she gets outraged and she's angry and she acts out. Then there's the angry white man. Incidentally, I happen to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma today, home of Black Wall Street, and I have on my Black Wall Street shirt. And so Black Wall Street, let's just start there. You know, African Americans at that time, they were descendants of slaves, might have been free slaves themselves, decided to settle in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They had their own hotels, their own retail stores, their own trades, their own communities. They were owning their own homes, minding their own business, thriving independently. Then the angry white men decide to burn it down because of accusations by a white woman. It doesn't even have to be true, the accusations. They just have to be said out loud. And so because of that perpetrated the Tulsa Race Massacre 100 years ago in 1921. Now let's fast forward to today, 2021. White people create laws that make it legal for them to tax you out of your property and tax you out of your land, so you can't even afford to pay the taxes, forcing you off the land and out of the property. That's called gentrification. They redraw the congressional district lines to make it next to impossible for Black and brown people to get political advantages and have equal representation in Congress. And when the vote still doesn't go their way, they charge the Capitol, they vandalize the place, they threaten to kill people, they bully cops and cause some of them to be killed. They show no restraint against the police officers. They show plenty of restraint against those armed white people. But if it was Black people, unarmed, they show no restraint. But still, these white people, these angry white people, they get a pass. They keep us from moving into certain neighborhoods, and with laws that essentially say no person of African blood can live in this neighborhood. Hundreds of years later, when you go back and you look at the laws and the bylaws of the city, that's what these laws are saying. So they're keeping African Americans from living in certain neighborhoods. They won't approve your mortgage loans, and that's called redlining. But then, if they do approve the loan, then they charge you exorbitant amount of interest on the loan. That's called highway robbery. But you get in there, you face them, you get the home, you build equity, and so much equity that you think it's time for you to sell the property, and then it appraises at half the value. Why? Because they're trying to keep you from getting your just due. So they're trying to keep you from building generational wealth. Yet they are angry. Why are they still angry? They're angry enough to chase unarmed black men down the street. And I'm talking about, of course, Ahmaud Arbery, whose murderers are on trial right now as we speak. So even in witness testimony, the guy Travis McMichael, who shot and killed Ahmaud Arbery, admitted on trial in the witness stand that Arbery was running away. He had no weapon. He didn't say anything, but still they turn it around and chase him with their trucks while he's trying to run away. They're so angry that they shoot unarmed black people, and now they're starting to shoot at each other. Yet Joe Biden says, this is not who we are, talking to white people. This is not who we are. But now recent laws and verdicts prove that this is who they are, and they're okay with it, because if they weren't okay with it, Kyle Rittenhouse wouldn't be walking away free, not being held accountable for any of the charges against him that include misdemeanor weapons charges all the way to murder, walked away free. So they must be okay with it. If they weren't okay with it, Kyle Rittenhouse would not have been able to have $2 million worth of money donated to his defense if they were not okay with it. That's what's going on in America. Why are people so angry that they're willing to put $2 million of their money to support someone who crossed over state lines using a legal gun, shot people, didn't even call 911 to help them, and claimed he was there to help, but clearly did nothing but destroy? Okay? If they weren't okay with it, if this is not who they are, if they're not angry white people, why do they do all these things and get away with it? If there's anybody who needs, as a matter of fact, I just read something the other day of an attorney, as a matter of fact, and I'm not even going to tell you his name because I don't want to give any more life to his claims than needs to be. But this attorney is looking to create something called Kyle's Law, whereby prosecutors cannot bring felony charges against an individual if there's no evidence of it. Now, I thought that was the law already. If there's no evidence, then there shouldn't be charges. But apparently this attorney wants to go a step further and make it a law that prosecutors can't do their job. So who's going to be in charge of that? Probably another angry white person. But white people must be okay with what's going on, because they seem to be either supporting it with their money, supporting it with their time, or they are supporting it by in other ways. For example, I just told you the example with wanting to create laws to keep prosecutors from doing what it is that they are supposed to do. Now, while I agree that there are some people who are erroneously charged or for assault, charged with assault and murder when their intent was just to protect themselves or their families from attacks. Nobody cares about that person being charged when it's a black person, when it's an African American, when it's a person of color. Nobody cares because Jaleel Stallings, I don't know if you know the name, but Jaleel Stallings in Minneapolis. And if you haven't already, I'll put the link in the chat. Jaleel Stallings, he is a resident in Minneapolis who was exercising his First Amendment rights to protest, his freedom of speech rights to protest in Minneapolis during the summer of 2020. And he was protesting peacefully with his neighbors and others. And there was an unmarked van that came into the neighborhood and started shooting bullets. And now we know those bullets were rubber bullets, but there was an unmarked van shooting at people, protesters in the street, and using his Second Amendment rights, Jaleel Stallings shot back at the van. Then after that, then police jump out of the van, arrest people, including Stallings, charge him with first degree, charged him with attempted murder of police officers when these cops never, they never announced themselves as being police officers to begin with. It was only after Jaleel Stallings of one and maybe others exercised their Second Amendment rights and decided that they did have the right to shoot back at these cops who didn't announce themselves as cops to begin with. So just last September, a couple of months ago, Stallings was acquitted of attempted murder of police officers when he should not have been charged to begin with. So where was the support for this black man in Minneapolis who was erroneously was persecuted essentially for exercising his rights? There was no mention of that. So there's another person. His name is Mark Wilson. He's in Sharpsburg, Georgia. Sharpsburg, Georgia. He is in jail right now awaiting what is supposed to be his right for a speedy and fair trial. Here's what happened to Mark Wilson. He was driving in his vehicle in June of 2020 during the summer of unrest after the modern day lynching of George Floyd. And Mark, a black man, was driving in the car with his white girlfriend. There was another group of white people, angry white people, in another vehicle that started to scream racial epithets at them, that tried to drive them off the road. And Mark Wilson, fearing for his life and trying to protect his life and the life of his girlfriend, he used his Second Amendment rights to shoot at them because that group of people used deadly force by using their vehicle as a weapon to try to force them off the road. When Mark shot at the vehicle, he shot and killed one of the people in the vehicle. So now he's charged with murder, and the judge in that case won't even allow him to have bond, let alone is trying to figure out why he's even being charged because he feared for his life. Okay, so you've got people, angry white people, who will put up $2 million to help an angry white boy who crossed over state lines with an illegal gun and shot and killed people. They'll take their money and support his defense. But you got people who should have the same consideration to a fair and speedy trial. In fact, Mark Wilson has been in jail. His incident encounter happened in June of 2020, whereas Kyle Rittenhouse, his incident happened in, I think, August or September of 2020. So he got a bond, he got out on bond, he's done had his trial, he's done been acquitted. Meanwhile, you got a black man still sitting in jail who gets no bond, who hasn't even had his trial set yet. So that's the difference in America. When I hear people say, like Joe Biden say, this is not who we are, when all indications say that this is who y'all are and you're okay with who you are. So what are we going to do about it? You know, we can talk about why Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted. We can talk about whether or not the McMichaels will be found guilty. And if they're not found guilty, the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? So if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel so that the next time I post new videos, you will be the first to know. Here's what I do think about the case of the McMichaels. See, if white people in law enforcement in, I think it's Brunswick, Georgia, if they weren't okay with the angry white people who killed Ahmaud Arbery, then the McMichaels would have been charged with Ahmaud Arbery's murder immediately. They would have been charged immediately. But local law enforcement allowed them to go free. It wasn't until after George Floyd's modern day lynching that we heard about Ahmaud Arbery's modern day lynching. It wasn't until after Breonna Taylor's unjustified shooting by cops in Louisville that we heard about Ahmaud Arbery. So months had gone by with Ahmaud Arbery's family having to suffer through all of his death, one, and then to be told that their son had committed a crime, two, when that wasn't true, and three, to know that the killers were sitting on the couch with their feet up, eating popcorn and bonbons around the corner, and we're not being held accountable. That's egregious as hell. They had to go through all that before we even knew what was going on. And it took all of these things that happened. It took protests. It took for outside in an outside investigation. It took for the firing of the then prosecutor, who now it turns out was in cahoots with the McMichaels. She knew them. They had worked together. She was trying to keep from charging them. She was covering up evidence. All of that was going on. So this is who y'all are. Angry white people are okay with being angry, and they're okay with supporting other angry white people. So this is who they are. Maya Angelou once said, when somebody tells you who they are, when they show you who they are, you believe them. So for hundreds of years, white people have proven who they are. They're angry, they're vindictive, and they're not above lying and crying when it suits their narrative. So we have to stop, we meaning everybody else, we need to stop hoping for the best and prepare for the worst, because they're angry because you have the gall, you have the unmitigated gall to stand up for yourself. You know your rights, we know our rights, and we stand up for ourselves, and they don't like that. They know that for centuries they have been getting paid off the profits of others' labor without just compensation. And the clock is winding down on that. The check is due on that with interest and everything on that. And they realize their time to take advantage and to be in power is coming to an end, and they're angry about it. And that's why white people are so angry. and it's not going to get better before it gets worse, in my opinion. So they know that, we keep talking about reparations to descendants of American slaves, and while everyone else is getting a paycheck, they expect for ADOS to continue to just sit back and watch everyone else get a paycheck and not us. But it's a different day, and it's a different generation of African Americans, and it's a different generation of expectations. And so with that comes accountability, and we are holding people accountable, and those people don't like it. And I don't care if they don't like it, and hopefully you don't care that they don't like it. But here's the thing, we have to be prepared for them to not like it. The rest of us, we have to stop hoping for the best, and we have to prepare for the worst. So, what does that look like? Well, if you plan to protest, just know this: in Florida and probably some other states, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill. I think it's called the anti-riot bill or something like that, whereby they're essentially encroaching on your First Amendment rights to protest. They are now making it hard, making it easier to charge protesters with a crime just for protesting, even though that's your First Amendment right. They are now making it so that if you are charged with a crime related to protesting, that you don't even get bond until your first court date. So you could be, depending on when they decided to make your court date, you could be sitting in jail over protesting for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, to whenever they feel like they want to get around to it, when it's your First Amendment right to protest and to your freedom of speech. And it's your right to have a bond that is comparable to your offense. But that's what they're doing in Florida. And in some states, they're making it legal for somebody to say they feared for their lives if you are protesting and you're in the street and they hit you with their car, or they assault you and kill you, God forbid. They can say, "Oh, I fear for my life," because they were in the street blocking my car, when they just could have driven away, or they could just stay in the car if they feel like they are that their lives are at stake. But this is the America that we live in. Also in Texas and probably some other states, whereby you used to have to go through training to get a license to carry a weapon. Now you don't even have to go through training. You don't have to have any accountability. You can just go buy a gun and have it, and God forbid use it on people. Because here's what's going on. When you had to have a license to carry a weapon, they still showed up shooting at the grocery store. They still showed up shooting at church. They still showed up shooting at school. They still showed up shooting at the nightclub. That was when they had to have a license. Now they don't have to have a license. So do you think it's going to get better? Meaning, do you think they're going to be less angry white people? Or are there going to be more angry white people? Y'all, it's going to be more angry white people, because they don't even have to have a license today. So while you're sitting around hoping for the best, you needs to be preparing for the worst. Okay. And because you don't want to show up to a gunfight and you ain't got no gun. Okay. You need to make sure that you are prepared. And, I could talk more about that, but the bottom line is you decide how prepared you want to be. But hopefully for you and your family's sake, you are prepared, because they're going to be more angry white people than there are going to be less angry white people before it's all over. And so that's it. Just want to share that with you. To find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. Thanks and have a super day.